One secret trip, one controlled meeting, and now a whisper so explosive it's shaking the very core of the monarchy. Meghan Markle didn't just walk into the UK quietly, she may have walked straight out of the royal future entirely.
I have a horrible feeling that we're seeing a breakdown in plain sight. I just, the movements, the way they move, the way they talk is so erratic.
Meghan back on royal property.
Yeah, no one is as horrified as I am. I am curious to know your take here. There's two ways we can look at this, okay? I look at it appalled, because I feel like in a way it's giving Harry and Meghan exactly what they want, credibility. It erases the hurts that they've caused over the last 6 years. They've not said I'm sorry publicly.
Harry and Meghan are desperate. They are trying to retrieve their situation sufficiently so that they will become bankable once more.
And you didn't prove your case. You had the opportunity to prove your case. You failed to do so. That's how the legal system works. Yes, no, he's never seen a situation in which he is not the victim, and he enjoys being the victim.
The fact is, they can pop in and have tea. I hope they had Highgrove jam, which is far better than the Meghan slop that she calls spread. So I got to taste what real produce tastes like from the Highgrove shop.
Let's start with the promise, because Meghan Markle made one, remember, a loud, clear, unforgettable line drawn in the sand that Meghan Markle was done with Britain. Done with the royal family, done with the rules, the silence, the hierarchy, and yet here we are watching Meghan Markle slip back into the United Kingdom like a shadow. No cameras, no announcement, no royal welcome. Just a quiet arrival that somehow exploded into global headlines within hours, and that's where everything begins to feel off. Because a visit so private doesn't accidentally become the most talked about story in the world overnight unless someone wanted it that way.
What she said is exactly right. It's a complete breakdown of the marriage, of Harry's mental stability. Like, nothing's working out for them. How can it? I mean, you just have ulterior motives to do things that you want and you're not getting it. And so you're losing your minds. Your lives are completely falling apart. It's going to get worse and worse. The more they try to brand and get out there to do all these different things to make money, the worse it's going to get. They're a complete disaster.
Because this wasn't just a visit, this was a signal, a move, a calculated step into a space Meghan Markle had publicly abandoned, and insiders immediately started asking the same question: why now? Why like this? And why did it feel less like a return and more like a test? Because according to multiple royal insiders, the doors that opened for Meghan Markle during this visit were not doors of reconciliation, they were doors of evaluation. Doors that could close just as quickly as they opened. And behind those gates at Highgrove, something shifted, something quiet but deeply consequential.
Meghan returning to the UK, the country she claims she hates, is a sign of defeat. And it is a sign that they are desperate and they do need money and they do need proximity to the British royal family so that they can try to attract new opportunities.
That's really true. So on the one hand, they've won because they're back on royal property. On the other hand, it's an admission of defeat that she tried to go it alone and be Meghan Inc., and it didn't work.
She would not be here if everything had... If she still had to record Confessions of a Female Founder, if she had a new season of With Love Meghan to shoot, if she was actually working on Meet Me at the Lake, The Wedding Date, or this new Afghanistan movie, Meghan Markle would not have the time to come crawling back to King Charles and Queen Camilla.
Because the moment that visit leaked, the narrative spiraled, accusations began flying, whispers grew louder, and suddenly the spotlight wasn't on a family reunion anymore, it was on trust, or more precisely, the complete absence of it. And that's where the real story begins, because sources close to the palace began hinting at something far more serious than a simple visit gone wrong. They started talking about boundaries, about conditions, about warnings that were allegedly made very clear before Meghan Markle ever stepped foot inside those royal walls.
This will be a private moment from the firm's point of view, but it might not be so private for Meghan and Harry. You just have to worry that this could be more material for another Netflix documentary or a future book.
Well, yes, that you've always got that sort of hanging over the royal family's head, because if it was a frosty meeting, you don't know.
And if you follow the pattern, if you connect the dots that have been quietly building for years, it starts to look less like coincidence and more like a controlled experiment. Because the royal family has played this game before, they've seen stories leak, narratives twist, private moments turn into global headlines, and this time, according to insiders, they weren't taking any chances. This wasn't a reunion, this was containment. And Meghan Markle walked into it knowing that one wrong move could change everything.
It's also been conditional, evidently, on no publicity, no, blah, 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 no leaking. Let's put it like that, no leaking. The last time there was leaking, they have evidently been informed that there can be no leaks, and if there are leaks, there will be consequences. And Harry and Meghan understand that they need the facade of reasonably good relations with the king and queen.
Now here's where it gets even more intense, because the timing of this visit was not random, not even close. It came right on the heels of a week that insiders are calling one of the most damaging periods Prince Harry has faced in years. A legal battle that didn't just fail, it collapsed in a way that left reputations bruised and questions hanging. And suddenly, Meghan Markle appears in the UK. Quietly, suddenly, strategically, and royal watchers immediately started asking whether this was a support mission or something else entirely.
We know from Charlotte Griffiths, and an amazing piece in the Daily Mail, victory lap for Charlotte Griffiths, by the way, saying, of course, that she was briefed by the Sussexes and their PR people that the balcony moment and the build-up to the Clarence House face-to-face summit, it goes in the paper, which is what the Sussexes want, and then they performatively complain and blame the palace for a story that they've planted themselves.
Because when everything is falling apart publicly, the one place you don't return to quietly is the place you once walked away from so loudly. Unless you need something, unless the stakes have changed, unless the narrative needs rewriting. And that's exactly why this visit didn't land the way it may have been expected to. Instead of softening public opinion, it ignited something sharper, something more skeptical. And behind closed doors, according to sources, that reaction didn't go unnoticed. Because while the public was debating motives and messaging inside the palace walls, something far more serious was unfolding. Something that insiders are now describing as a line being quietly drawn. A moment where the royal family, particularly those closest to the future of the monarchy, began reassessing exactly how far this relationship could go. And more importantly, how much risk it carried moving forward. Because one thing has become painfully clear, this isn't just about personal tensions anymore. This is about control, about narrative, about the future image of the institution itself. And here's the twist that has royal watchers absolutely locked in. Because according to emerging whispers, this visit may not have opened doors at all. It may have done the opposite. It may have been the moment certain senior figures decided that enough uncertainty had been tolerated, that enough unpredictability had been managed, and that moving forward, the monarchy could not afford another cycle of private moments turning into public spectacles. And if that's true, then Meghan Markle didn't just face backlash after this visit. Meghan Markle may have triggered a decision that changes everything. And this is where the story takes a turn that nobody inside that palace could ignore anymore. Because after the doors closed at Highgrove and the carefully managed meeting came to an end, the real fallout didn't happen in front of cameras. It happened in whispers, in phone calls, in the quiet recalculations of people who have spent their entire lives protecting something far bigger than personal relationships. And what they saw unfolding wasn't stability. It wasn't trust rebuilding. It was a pattern repeating itself yet again. And this time, according to those watching closely, the tolerance for that pattern had finally reached its limit. Because the visit itself, despite all the speculation and all the noise surrounding it, was strikingly brief, almost surgically controlled. With every movement watched, every interaction limited, every moment stripped of the kind of warmth that would signal genuine reconciliation. And insiders began pointing out the same detail over and over again, that meetings like this, short, formal, contained, are not designed to rebuild relationships. They are designed to assess risk, to observe behavior. to determine whether the situation can be managed or whether it has already slipped beyond control. And by the time Meghan Markle walked back out of those gates, many believed that assessment had already been made, because what followed wasn't a softening of tone or a quiet understanding. It was a tightening, a noticeable shift in how future interactions were being discussed behind the scenes. And that's where the phrase started circulating, not publicly, not officially, but consistently enough to raise eyebrows. Future invitations were no longer a given. Future access was no longer assumed, and most importantly, future visits would not happen under the same open-ended expectations that may have existed before. And if that sounds subtle, it isn't, because in royal terms, that kind of shift is seismic. And then comes the part that makes this entire situation feel less like a family disagreement and more like a strategic decision, because those closest to the future of the monarchy, particularly those aligned with Prince William and Catherine, were reportedly already operating under a completely different mindset, one that had very little room for uncertainty, very little patience for unpredictability, and absolutely no appetite for repeating cycles that had already caused years of damage. And when Meghan Markle's visit unfolded in the way it did, it didn't challenge that mindset, it reinforced it. Because from that perspective, every unexpected headline, every leak, every sudden surge of attention surrounding what was supposed to be a private moment only confirmed what they had feared all along, that control over the narrative was slipping, that private spaces were no longer truly private, and that any future engagement carried a level of risk that could no longer be ignored. And once that conclusion starts to take hold at that level, decisions follow, not emotional ones, not reactive ones, but calculated, long-term decisions designed to protect the institution at all costs. And this is exactly where the idea of being quietly cut off from future royal invitations begins to make sense, not as a dramatic punishment, not as a public statement, but as a controlled withdrawal, a gradual tightening of access that happens so subtly the public barely notices until the absence becomes impossible to ignore. Because that's how this system works. It doesn't explode outward, it closes inward slowly, deliberately, and with a precision that leaves very little room for reversal once the process has begun. Because think about what this means moving forward. If every visit becomes conditional, if every meeting is treated as a test, if every interaction is weighed against the risk of exposure, then the relationship itself stops functioning as a relationship and starts functioning as a liability. And once that shift happens, the outcome is almost inevitable, not overnight, not with a single announcement, but through a series of quiet decisions that lead to the same place: distance, separation, and eventually silence. And yet what makes this entire situation even more explosive is that none of this is being confirmed openly, none of it is being declared in official statements. It exists in that space between what is said and what is understood, between what is shown and what is deliberately kept out of view. And that's exactly why it's so powerful, because the absence of confirmation doesn't weaken the story, it intensifies it. It allows speculation to grow, it allows every small detail to take on greater meaning, and it keeps the entire narrative suspended in a state of unresolved tension. Because the question now isn't just what happened during that secret UK trip, the question is what happens next? What happens when the next invitation doesn't come? What happens when the next family event passes without a mention? What happens when the distance that has been slowly building suddenly becomes visible to everyone watching? And by the time those answers start to emerge, the decision that was quietly set in motion after this visit may already be impossible to reverse.